Hey y'all, what's up? This is attorney Chloe Corbett, aka the Duchess of Justice. I am one half of the Defiant Lawyers, and I am here to talk about this Jonathan Majors verdict and the impact that it will have on his career and what's going to happen with Marvel now that he's been convicted of misdemeanor assault and other charges. So stay tuned right after this. Welcome back, everyone. I am filming this right before Christmas, so I want to wish each and every one of you all a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. I hope that you have a wonderful, happy time with your friends and family and enjoy this season, and remember that Jesus is the reason for this season. So I am going to discuss this major news that has come out in the last couple of days about actor Jonathan Majors being found guilty in New York of misdemeanor assault and other charges. And I'm going to break this down for you all. So let's get into it. For those of you all who don't know, Jonathan Majors was an up and coming and rising star in Hollywood. This very year, he starred in Creed 3, opposite of Michael B. Jordan. I saw that movie. It was a great movie. It was the first time that Michael B. Jordan directed a film. He also starred in a Marvel movie called Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumanium. Now, I know some of you all may be watching this video who are not Marvel fans. I am a massive Marvel fan. I've seen every Marvel movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I love superheroes. I love comic books. I love all things related to Marvel. So I have been following Jonathan Majors' rise to fame since the very beginning. Since he starred in other movies like The Five Bloods, he was in a highly acclaimed show called Lovecraft Country that was very highly rated, and he has been the star of this last phase of Marvel movies as well. So I have been following his rise, and I was very excited to see where his rise was going to take him, especially as it relates to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel is a huge comic book company that's been around since the early 1900s. They've been sort of a rival to DC. So DC has superheroes like Batman and Superman, and Marvel has superheroes like Spider-Man, X-Men, and they, in the mid 2000s, they started releasing various movies that became known as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And one of the major villains that was played by Jonathan Majors was set to become a major focus of Marvel movies this year and going into 2024 and 2025. So directly after this guilty verdict came out, Marvel released a statement through Deadline that he was no longer going to be starring in their movies, which is huge. But we'll get to that. Let's talk about what these actual charges are. So the NYPD released a statement back in March of this year that, quote, on Saturday, March 25th, 2023, at approximately 11:14 hours, police responded to a 911 call inside of an apartment located in the vicinity of West 22nd Street and 8th Avenue. Their statement goes on to say that, quote, a preliminary investigation determined that a 33-year-old male was involved in a domestic dispute with a 30-year-old female. The victim informed police she was assaulted. Officers placed the 33-year-old male into custody without incident. The victim sustained minor injuries to her head and neck and was removed to an area hospital in stable condition. End quote. So Jonathan Majors was identified by the police and was listed as having been charged with strangulation, assault, and harassment. At the time, the victim, and I say that in quotes for a reason, because at the time that this statement was released, there was no, under the law, actual victim. There was a complaining witness. And so oftentimes you have law enforcement and prosecutors, identifying people who are complaining witnesses who are alleging that they have been the victims of crimes and just going ahead and saying that they are victims. As a criminal defense attorney, I always make sure that I call the alleged victim in any case that my client has alleged to have harmed or done something against as the complaining witness, because at that point, that's all that they are. Unless my client is found guilty or pleads guilty to an offense. So you'll notice in that statement, the police, they already put out the narrative that there's a victim here, one, and two, that she sustained injuries. So that's already into the public eye. And that's something that we have to think about as defense attorneys when we're representing our clients as well. What type of investigation did the police do? What are these hearsay statements that the police are putting out into the public or into their police reports? We analyze that and we attack it when necessary as well to vigorously defend our clients. So that's the first thing I want to tell you. Now, at the time, a rep for Majors told People magazine, quote, "He has done nothing wrong. We look forward to clearing his name and clearing this up," end quote. So the reports are that Majors and this alleged victim, who we now know is 30-year-old Grace Jabari, or his ex-girlfriend, got into this altercation because Jonathan Majors allegedly received a romantic text message from a woman. And when allegedly Jabari took his phone, that's when some type of interaction ensued. So because of this interaction, Majors was facing the following charges: assault in the third degree with intent to cause physical injury, assault in the third degree recklessly causing physical injury, aggravated harassment in the second degree, and harassment in the second degree in connection with that alleged fight between him and Jabari that spilled into the streets of Chinatown back in March of this year. So just to go over a little bit of Jonathan Majors' reported relationship with Grace Jabari, according to People magazine, it was reported that they met shortly after being on the set of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumanium. Again, that's a Marvel movie. And that supposedly the actor asked for Grace Jabari's phone number, and she was a choreographer. According to prosecutors in opening statements that were presented to the jury in the trial that started this month, in the beginning of what became a 2-year relationship, Majors wrote Jabari love notes, according to prosecutors. And according to prosecutors, his true self began to emerge. Assistant District Attorney Michael Perez said in opening statements, claiming that the actor, quote, engaged in a cruel and manipulative pattern of psychological and physical abuse that culminated in the tragic end of their relationship, even allegedly threatening suicide after fights to control Grace Jabari's reactions. According to prosecutors, in one fight recorded by Jabari, which they planned to play and did play, Majors, who was black, allegedly told his then girlfriend Jabari, who was white, that he wanted her to be more like Coretta Scott King and Michelle Obama, and to, quote, and to conform to the plan and make sacrifices for him. So obviously, it was the goal of the prosecutors to paint Jonathan Majors as an abuser, as manipulative, as controlling. And they were trying to prove to the jury that there was a pattern of this. But here's the thing. The state has the burden to prove these charges against any defendant, and here against Jonathan Majors beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is a very high standard. It's higher than what you all may have heard, probable cause, which is what police need to stop someone or to get an arrest warrant or a search warrant. It's higher than preponderance of the evidence, which is what is needed in civil cases, which is it's more likely than not that what the plaintiff is claiming is true. Is higher than clear and convincing evidence, which is what is needed in family law trials here in Texas, in order for one parent to prevail over the other. It is the higher standard. Why is it so high? Because the government is literally trying to take someone's liberty away. And they better make sure that they have enough evidence to put that person behind bars, put them on probation, take their liberty and their freedom away. So the government, through its police officers, law enforcement agents, district attorneys, assistant district attorneys, are going to accuse people of crimes and ask a jury or a judge to throw that person in jail or prison, then they better have the highest standard. So it was up to the prosecution to put on testimony, evidence, etc., showing or proving beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Majors committed these crimes. Now, a lot of people think, oh, then the prosecution must have direct evidence. They must have an eyewitness or blood on the knife, if that is an accusation, or some type of direct evidence linking the defendant to the offense. But that's not the case. A lot of times, and in most cases, all they have are circumstantial evidence, which is evidence that does not directly link the person accused to the crime. But people are convicted every single day in this country based merely on circumstantial evidence. So, in this case, the jury found Mr. Majors guilty of 2 of the offenses and not the rest. So they believe that the prosecution met its burden beyond a reasonable doubt on 2 of the charges, but not all of the charges that were presented against Mr. Majors. Now, one person who has also been in the limelight regarding this trial has been Jonathan's attorney, Priya Chaudhry, who from the very beginning has aggressively released statements to the public and to news outlets, maintaining her client's innocence, maintaining that the complaining witness was lying. And she also released text messages that were highly criticized by the public or different people, stating that they did not necessarily help Jonathan. So I want to get into that a little bit because she really has been at the forefront of this trial and has been a little bit polarizing in what she has done. According to CBS, she released a statement that said, quote, "This evidence includes video footage from the vehicle where this episode took place, witness testimony from the driver and others who both saw and heard the episode, and most importantly, 2 written statements from the woman recanting these allegations." She goes on to say that all of the evidence proves that Mr. Majors is entirely innocent and did not assault her whatsoever. So that's a statement that she supposedly released to CBS in defense of her client. And I will say this, as a defense attorney and as a civil rights attorney, I feel a couple ways about going to the media regarding a client's case. One, Texas has strict laws dictating what attorneys can say to the media about a client's case. So we always make sure that we are very cognizant of what we say, of any information that is released, because we don't want to violate those ethic laws that Texas has here. And, strategically, we don't want sometimes the public or for the prosecution or the state to know our strategy. We want to keep our trial strategy as close to the chest as possible in some cases. However, in some cases, we make a calculated decision to go all out and put all of our coins on the table. And that is the road that Mr. Majors' legal team seems to have taken in releasing the statements that they did to the police. That's typically not what we do on criminal cases, but I will say that on civil rights cases, a lot of times you really do have to take your client's case to the media for the government or for the corporation to hold itself accountable for violating our client's civil rights. But we don't necessarily do that in criminal cases and other types of cases. So it's a little bit different for Mr. Majors' attorney to do that. Not saying that it's wrong. She is privy to all of the information, the discovery that we are not privy to here in the public. and, not being a part of his legal team. So she may have felt it was necessary to come out, get ahead of it, especially him being a high profile person. And this was going to be reported anyway. The fact that he was arrested, the fact that that this accusation was made, it was going to be in the news. So she may have felt like, you know what, let's go out and let's go ham in representing him and, start out strong that we believe he's innocent and here's why. So I can't necessarily judge her for that because I'm not privy to all of the information. Another thing that his legal team did was release text messages supposedly between Jonathan Majors and his ex-girlfriend. Now, his team released it to prove why Mr. Majors was innocent. I don't know if it necessarily had that effect, but let me read a little bit to you, and I'll put that on the screen too. So this is supposedly a text message between Grace and Jonathan Majors. He says, quote, "Please let me know you're okay when you get this. They assured me that you won't be charged." So this is Grace speaking. "They said they had to arrest you as protocol when they saw the injuries on me and they knew we had a fight." That doesn't necessarily help Jonathan Majors. Now, Jonathan could have said he was acting in self-defense. They had a fight because she came at him and he was defending himself. But let's go on. She supposedly says, "I'm so angry that they did, and I'm sorry you're in this position. We'll make sure nothing happens about this. I told them it was my fault for trying to grab your phone. I only just got out of the hospital. Just call me when you're out. I love you." Then they just called again to check on me, and I reiterated how this was not an attack, and they do not have my blessing on any charges being placed. I read the paper they gave me about strangulation, and I said point blank this did not occur and should be removed immediately. The judge is definitely going to be told this. She ensured this to me. I know you have the best team and there's nothing to worry about. I just want you to know that I'm doing all I can on my end. I also said to tell the judge to know that the origin of the call was to do with me collapsing and passing out, and your worry is my partner due to our communication prior out of care. She promised all of this will be relayed. So again, these are supposed text messages from Grace Jabari to Jonathan Majors. This is what his camp is alleging. And look, so as a defense attorney, oftentimes there are times where the complaining witness wishes to recant their allegations and sign an affidavit, what we call an affidavit of non-prosecution, letting the prosecution and the state know that they do not want the person to be prosecuted and that they recant the allegations against the person and to stop all prosecution. That we do get those a lot, especially in domestic violence or family violence, as we call it here in Texas, cases. However, that does not mean that the state has to drop the charges at all. It can be something that can help, that can mitigate what the prosecution is willing to offer. We have used it to get, dismissals on cases, but it does not mean that the prosecutor has to dismiss the case. In more cases than not, the prosecution does not dismiss the case. And in fact, even with the affidavit of non-prosecution, the state can subpoena the complaining witness to still come to testify. And if they, go against that subpoena, there can be consequences. So we do try to get it, but we also let people know that it is not a catch-all that your case is going to be dismissed. But it is good to have. So I speculate that may have been what Jonathan Majors' legal team, what their intent was, to try to put pressure on the district attorney's office to drop the charges based on what was supposedly said here. But as we know, those charges were not dropped and it did go to trial. And Mr. Majors was found guilty of some criminal offenses. So Mr. Majors' attorney decided to release those text messages ahead of time. Again, I speculate is to get ahead of the matter and try to put pressure on the district attorney's office, which did not work in this case because they continued on the trial. And it was reported that his attorney, in her opening statements, brought out the racial dynamics of the former couple's case front and center. It was reported that she notated in surveillance footage after the alleged attack that Jabari did not have, quote, a speck of blood in her, quote, blonde hair, no blood on her fair face. And so it seems like the racial dynamics between Jonathan being black and Grace Jabari being white was a strategic move by his legal team, Ms. Chaudhry, to bring that out to the jury. And look, we do have to do that. If our client is black or some other race, and we know there's some historic injustices that the criminal justice system has placed on black defendants, which we know that there have been, and it needs to be pointed out to make sure you get a fair and unbiased jury, that just because the complaining witness is white and my client is black, are you going to give more credence and credibility to the alleged white victim and be biased against my client? That's what we have to find out as attorneys. And so I want to talk a little bit about jury selection, because this is such an important process of our jury trial system. And it is a core tenet of the American legal system that any person accused of a crime or saying that they have been injured by someone else, or in Texas here on certain family law cases, you can have a jury of your peers in the county where the alleged offense or the alleged injury took place, and have those people sit there, listen to the evidence, and make a determination. But it is the job of us as attorneys to get fair, unbiased jurors to sit there and listen only to the evidence that is admitted and presented, and not bring in their own biases and preconceived notions into the trial. Because as we like to say when we're selecting a jury, we all have biases. I'm originally from North Carolina, and I prefer pork barbecue over the brisket barbecue here in Texas. Now, I usually don't say that because you don't want to say that to Texas juries, but I might just let y'all in on that. I prefer North Carolina style barbecue over Texas barbecue. And so I get into spats with my Texas friends all the time about how our barbecue, North Carolina barbecue, is better than Texas barbecue. So obviously, if there was some type of dispute over barbecue, and if it was a dispute regarding North Carolina versus Texas barbecue, I'm biased towards North Carolina barbecue and against Texas barbecue. And that's fine. That's my preference. That's what we tell potential jury members. We can't sit here and change your mind in 15 minutes. That's not the goal. What we say is, this type of case is likely not the best type of case for you to be a jury member on. Now, if this was a trial about my favorite type of cereal, then that might be different. But if it's involving barbecue, I'm probably not the best person to sit on the jury. So our goal is to get just fair-minded people who will listen to what comes from the witness stand and the evidence that is admitted, because that is the only thing that is evidence in a case. What we say as attorneys is not evidence. Our opening statements, our closing arguments, the arguments that we make to the judge, our objections, that's not evidence. The only thing that's evidence in a trial is what comes from a witness stand, from a person who raises their hand and swears to tell the truth, and the exhibits that are admitted by the court after objection and after the court, determines that they are credible and authenticated. That's the only thing that is evidence. And so that's what we want people to make their decision on as jurors. What comes from the witness stand, the admitted exhibits. And so for Mr. Major's case, if there was a jury person who family member, may have been a white person whose family member was attacked by a black man, obviously she wouldn't want that person on the jury because they have an experience that could sway the jury. And so you have to bring up this type of information in these cases. and most importantly in jury selection, so that you could get the most unbiased people to sit on that jury as possible. So with Mr. Major's trial, it was a 2-week long trial in Manhattan that included 12 witnesses who gave testimony. Grace Jabari, who's the alleged victim, told the jury that her boyfriend of more than a year and a half had often slipped into, quote, rage and aggression during their relationship, and that in March they had gotten into a physical altercation. So she gave about 4 days of testimony in that trial. It was also presented as evidence that Majors, he called 911 and he told the dispatcher he did not know what happened to Jabari. Quote, she's unconscious. She's naked from the bottom down. She has a sweatshirt on. She's my ex-partner. We broke up. I came back. According to what was reported at the trial, Ms. Jabari went to the hospital and was treated for a hairline fracture to a bone in her middle finger and a cut in her ear, and that Mr. Majors was arrested that night in his living room. Now, this is big. So it was reported that there were previous incidents of domestic violence and that the prosecution was trying to get those previous incidents into evidence before the jury. But under the Texas rules of evidence, which are largely based off the federal rules of evidence, a person's prior bad acts normally cannot be presented to the jury because the law says the jury must decide based on this particular incident whether or not the person accused is guilty. But according to what's being reported, the presiding judge has said that because of the defense attorney's cross-examination of Ms. Jabari, it opened the door for prosecutors to share text messages about an alleged prior incident. That's big. One of the things that we do not want to do as defense attorneys is to go so far in our cross-examination or our presentation that we open the door to allow prosecutors to get over the rule that you cannot enter bad acts or talk about character, to allow them to do that. So based on what the defense team did here, it's reported that the judge said, well, look, you all opened the door for the prosecutors to be able to present text messages that supposedly show that there was a previous domestic violence incident between Mr. Majors and Jabari. So this is what the prosecution was allowed to present. This is a text message between Mr. Majors and Jabari, supposedly. This is from Jonathan. It's just fake. And you have, I fear, you have no perspective of what could happen if you go to the hospital. They will ask you questions. And as I don't think you actually protect us, it could lead to an investigation, even if you do lie and they suspect something. Supposedly, she says, I would tell the doctor I bumped my head. If I go, I'm going to give it one more day, but I can't sleep and I need some stronger painkillers. That's all. Why would I want to tell them what really happened when it's clear I want to be with you? He supposedly responds, I feel like you want to be together, as in not embarrass yourself for everything you've said to your friends and family. Last night, I considered killing myself versus coming home. You said you needed love last night, and I put my feelings aside and tried to give you that. I need love too. Or maybe I'm such a monster and horrible man that I don't deserve it and should just kill myself. Wow. So these text messages were entered into evidence, and the prosecution argued that Jonathan had previously acknowledged physically attacking Grace before. So that's big that the judge allowed those previous text messages in. There were 6 members of the jury, only one of which was black. It was reported by people that some members of the jury had appeared sympathetic to Jonathan. Lakeisha Johnson, the only black person on the jury, reportedly had mouthed repeatedly, "That's right," during Jonathan's cross-examination. But I want to go back to his attorney because in her closing statements, it was reported that she tried to refocus the case again on race, allegedly saying that He had been presumed guilty by law enforcement because he is a black man who was accused by his ex, a white woman. She supposedly said, quote, "They took a look at Mr. Majors and made up their minds. They decided who was the victim and who was the criminal," end quote. She added that knowing what calling 911 could mean, and he dialed anyway, and quote, his fear of what happens when a black man in America calls 911 came true. So again, this was his attorney trying to refocus and center the case on race, which is, look, it is legitimate. We know that there is a dire history of this unjust legal system presuming black men guilty and not presuming them innocent. We know that there have been hundreds of thousands of black people that have been incarcerated unjustly, wrongfully convicted, killed, lynched, all type of things. And if his attorney felt that that was the best way to defend her client, then hey, we're not there to see all of the ins and outs of the case. But despite all of that, Jonathan Majors was convicted of 2 misdemeanors. So as a recap, Ms. Jabari testified that the alleged incident occurred in a private car when she saw a text on Majors' phone that read, quote, "Oh, how I wish to be quit kissing you," end quote. Ms. Jabari was reported to testify that she tried to snatch the phone from Majors, who then pried her finger from the phone, grabbed her arm and right hand, twisted her forearm, and struck her head to get the phone away from her. So the first 3 charges were misdemeanor offenses and related to alleged incidents in the car. And the 4th charge of harassment relates to the allegation that Majors threw Ms. Jabari back into the car as she tried to exit. And there was some video that was released. We'll put that here. His legal team argued that he placed her in the car to stop her from running into traffic. And it was captured on surveillance video, while the alleged altercation inside the car was not captured on camera. So after he was found guilty of 2 of the offenses, both of which are misdemeanors and carry a sentence up to 1 year, he is set to be sentenced on February 6, 2024. And his attorney released a statement that he, quote, looks forward to fully clearing his name. Also, she said, quote, "Mr. Majors is grateful to God, his family, his friends, and his fans for the love and support during these harrowing 8 months." Ms. Jabari's attorney, she said, quote, "In part, we are gratified to see justice served by today's guilty verdict." Quote, "Ms. Jabari testified publicly and truthfully, even though reliving these traumatic events on the witness stand was obviously painful. We are grateful to the jurors and the judge for their attention and patience." And then it goes on. So Mr. Majors is set to be sentenced February 6th. Again, he faces up to a year in jail for each of the 2 convictions. Now, there's a couple more things I want to talk about before I end this video. The first is the fact that after this incident, he seemingly got into a relationship with actress Megan Good, who is a black actress. She's well known within the black community. And there's been a lot of cynicism regarding their relationship as to whether he could have the black community on his side. And it just seemed a little, according to people, a little suspicious that after, his white ex-girlfriend accused him of the harassment and the assault, he then gets into a public relationship with Megan Good. And it's been speculated whether or not it is a PR relationship, that their team suggested that they link up in order to make him look better in the public. Look, I don't know. I'm an attorney. I base what I say on facts and knowledge and evidence, not speculation. I will say in terms of the optics are not that great, to suddenly get into this relationship with Megan Good, but we don't know what his prior dating history is. We don't know, who he was talking to, maybe, or who this supposed text message was from, whether or not it was from a black woman. So I'm not going to get into all of that, but there has been a lot of speculation about it. It is a little curious that as soon as he got into this legal trouble, he then pops out with Megan Good. But hey, I don't know. That ain't for me to speculate on. I base my speculation on facts and things that are being reported as facts. The second thing is, where does his career go from here? Like I said at the very beginning, he was on such a high rise, especially with the Marvel movies that he was going to be in. And like I said before, the movies that he was going to be in, the Marvel Cinematic movies, they make billions of dollars. Not millions, billions. And Marvel was literally creating a whole host of movies, and they were going to make a whole phase of their movies about his character. He was playing Kang the Conqueror in those movies. And right after this verdict was given, Marvel dropped him. So it's safe to say that this is going to have dire consequences on Jonathan's career. We don't know how he's going to come back from this. The fact that Marvel, who is owned by Disney, so it's really Disney. We can presume that it's Disney executives that did this. The fact that Disney dropped him so fast and are willing to completely change their lineup of films, and that they have been planning for years and years and years and years. So these Marvel movies, they don't just come out. They're planned years, if not decades in advance. And so the fact that they're willing to drop them that fast and then change these decades-long plans, it just shows how negatively and badly this is affecting his career. So I will keep you all updated on all of this. I want to thank you all for sticking around and listening to my analysis of this and listening to us give our feedback. And we want to thank you all so much for getting us to 5,000 subscribers. We have said so much how 5,000 subscribers was our goal. And because of you all, because of each and every one of you all, we were able to reach it, and we're able to continue these videos. And I just want to say sincerely that we appreciate all of you all who take time to listen, to comment, even if you disagree with some of our analysis and our opinions. We are open to that, and we like that. We love that you engaged. So tell me below, what do you all think about this trial? Do you think that it was justified that Jonathan Majors was found guilty of those misdemeanor offenses? And do you think that he can come back? Will his career survive this? I want to hear what you all thought. Let us know down below. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and I'll see you next time. Peace.